Attention to. You may hear that I'm clearing my throat, periodically. I told the people in the first service this. If you've ever had a brownie or a donut with powdered sugar on it and you take and you get powdered sugar down your throat, I don't know, maybe that's only me that does that. Well, except for that it wasn't powdered sugar. It was Tylenol PM. And the caplet is still down in my airway someplace. It's not something that you can drink and it goes away. It's still there. And so if I sound a little rattly this morning or if I'm clearing my throat, that's why it is. It's not allergies. It's not infectious. The what? I'm going to stand on my head and hope gravity does its work. That was one of the reasons I didn't call the doctor about it, because doctors normally would want to do a bronchoscopy, and then I would not have been here this morning, which would have worked a hardship for everybody. And so when your sermon is done, you might as well just go on with the show. Also, another note this morning, it did not make the slides. There wasn't time to get it in. But amongst your prayers, if I could ask you to remember my older brother. He is 78 years old, and for the last month, he's been in and out and in and out and in and out of the hospital with bacterial meningitis. It has deteriorated, and he is now septic. And so he is no longer in the hospital in Laramie, Wyoming. He is now in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about 2 hours away from their home if you straight shot through the mountains. And so please keep him in your prayers as well. Let's have our countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you, all of you, and for those of you that are joining us from online, we bid you a welcome morning as well. This morning, we're going to be starting a two-part series, and the series that I'm going to be asking you to kind of ruminate on for the next couple of weeks is something that all of us have experienced at one time or another. Sometimes it's been up close and personal. Sometimes it's been at a distance. Unfortunately, it tends to repeat itself more and more often as we get older. Anybody want to take a stab? The grieving process. As we get older, typically there are things that we used to have, relationships, etc., that we no longer have. I'm going to ask you to spend a couple of minutes this morning at your tables talking about times when you have found yourself grieving. And again, this is fertile ground. This will keep us busy for a couple of weeks. But before we do that, let's have an opening prayer. Father in heaven, we give thanks to you for the gift of your dear Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we gather together. We ask that as a result of his suffering, death, and resurrection, that we might live victorious lives, both in the here and now and also in the hereafter. But Lord, as we go through these various seasons of life, we find that oftentimes we lose loved ones and friends. Help us to be able to accept that. Help us to be able to deal with it as your children. Help us to be able to understand it better. In Jesus' name we humbly pray. Amen. Okay, a couple of minutes about times in your life when you have felt a loss and when you have felt grief. And we'll get back in just 5 Judging by the animated discussion, I am guessing that everybody at one point or another has experienced loss. Anybody care to share that? Do we have a Sam? You care to be the mic carrier this morning? Fantastic. Who has a loss that they would be willing to share? Anybody? And what's your name?
I'm Mary.
Thank you.
My mother had Alzheimer's for 20 years. And 3 years before she died, I went to visit her, and she stood there in the hallway and looked at me, totally befuddled, did not know who I was. She actually died for me that day. But 3 years later, when she finally did die, there was a lot of relief in that. Just because by then, she wasn't walking. All of her food was being pureed.
Yeah.
She wasn't talking. She was babbling like a baby. And it just wasn't a life for her to have. So she's with her Lord, our Lord. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that when that time, 3 years before she died, when she didn't know who I was, that really hit me more than when she actually did die. Mm-hmm. And she ended up dying from pneumonia, of all things, because she aspirated, got pneumonia. 5 days later, she was gone. So it was actually a relief.
Yeah.
It was a relief. So I grieved for 3 years before she died.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else? I saw another hand go up back there.
We're grieving losing our church family that's not here today.
Okay. Hold it right up to your...
We're grieving about losing our church family that is in a different location today.
Yeah? There's a lot of grief over that. Yeah. Have we really lost them?
They're still family.
They're still family. We're separated. Yeah. Other losses.
Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Again. We were talking about how many losses, I mean, there's losses with dementia, there's losses with cancer, losses with relationships that change because of distance or even because of problems. But I don't even know what else I was going to say.
So it's not just the loss of people, it can be the loss of other things as well. We're going to be getting into that.
And I have my favorite grief book is called Recovering from the Losses of Life, and the guy that wrote it talked about the fact that any change is loss, and it requires grieving. So that's
change is a long 4-letter word. That goes along with how many Lutherans does it take to change a light bulb? Change? Others? Okay, we're gonna do a little exercise here. How many of you have lost a parent? How many of you have lost a grandparent? Okay, I think I got everybody with that one. How many of you have lost a sibling, a brother or sister? How many of you have lost a child? How many of you have lost a grandchild? How many of you have lost a job? Okay. How many of you have lost a marriage? Okay. How many of you have, let's open it up still larger, make sure we've got everybody. How many of you have lost a pet? Oh yeah. Who was it that once said, why do we give our hearts to dogs who break them? Loss is a very common thing. Mourning is a very common thing. But it strikes me that very seldom do you hear anybody talk about it. And so it's this great mystery. It's like a black cloud that all of a sudden comes and we don't understand it. And that's what this week and next week we're going to be doing a little bit about. We're going to be talking about loss and what to expect. Now, I'm going to ask you to think just a bit. And I want you to imagine that your life is a great big pizza pie. Okay? Great, big, enormous. And I want you to imagine that everybody in your life has a various sized slice of that pie. Okay? You with me? If you're married, chances are your spouse is going to occupy a pretty large slice. If you've got children, they're probably going to have a big slice. If you've got parents or grandchildren, they will have bigger slices. If you have a favorite person that checks you out at Kroger's, they'll have a very thin little piece of your slice of pie. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think about grieving in proportion to your loss. Grieving in proportion to your loss. And I'm gonna first of all just let you guys try and figure it out by yourselves for just a few minutes. I'm going to come back and steer the conversation. I'm good. One of the instructions that I did not mention and should have mentioned is that when you're talking about your emotional pizza pie and everybody having a different size slice in there, these should be living people. So for me, biggest slice of my emotional pie is Laura, followed by my sons, Tim and Andy. followed by probably my brothers and sister, followed by friends, followed by other people I know, followed by my Dinner for Eight group, followed by my small group, followed by this group, followed by that group, you know, these different people. And pretty soon you start to see that some people are very emotionally significant in your lives. Did you notice that? So why is it then that we grieve for people that we don't really know, who have had a loss, and they did not fit into our emotional pizza pie at all? Have you ever thought about that? There was a funeral that I performed a long time ago. It was for a young man with 2 young daughters and a young wife, and it was a tragedy. It came right out of the clear blue. No one saw it coming. The church was absolutely filled with people that were in tears. What happened? Okay, we'll get to that in a little bit also, but I want you to notice that grief is not, grief can be kind of a funny thing to work with, because there are all of these different variables that play into it. Have you ever noticed, for example, that when, and Mary hit the nail on the head, have you ever noticed then when you are expecting a death, it's a whole lot easier to grieve. The grieving process does not last as long as when it comes suddenly. Anybody care to talk to that? Microphone. Name, please.
Kevin. Well, I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question, but like, it seems like if you know a person is aging and becoming more sickly and needing more and more care, the grieving process starts way back then. And then after they pass away, say 10 years later, and you've been caring for them and watching them decline all these years, it's a lot of the grieving has been done.
Yes. Yes, very good observation. Like I said, Mary hit it on the head. When you have somebody that is in a process of dying over a lengthy period of time, emotionally you start to get used to that idea that that person is not always going to be there. And so when that slice of pie is removed, it doesn't slam shut. Nor does it leave a big gaping hole. You've already kind of emotionally prepared for that time when it will be closed. And that can happen in a wide variety of different ways. It happens sometimes with declining mental faculties. It can happen with declining physical faculties, where a person just has one thing after another over a period of months and months. And it just seems like they start to get better and they hit a new low. They start to get better, they hit a new low. And it's not a glide pattern, it's kind of a bumpy ride down the hill. The thing is, when we have these experiences, here's what I want you to ask yourself. How many of you would like a long, protracted death, and how many of you would like it to go like that? And why? How many of you would like to have a long, protracted death, or how many of you would like to go bing overnight? Go to sleep at night, wake up in heaven in the morning. Okay? Okay, we're going to need a microphone for this one. Anybody want to share their thoughts? Who wants to go quickly? Any hands? Who wants to go quickly and why?
Oh, I didn't. Well, I would choose to go quickly. I think my name is Scott, and I think I'm not going to speak for my wife since she's not here, but she has said that to me as well. She hopes you go quickly. Yeah, she hopes I
Did she say soon too?
Is there anybody else who hopes their spouse will go quickly? No. Yeah, we've got a hand. I think we've got a hand. We've got a hand here. Who wants to go quickly?
What was I supposed to say? Just.
You got volunteered.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we just said that the only time that you really see a benefit in someone lingering is if they don't know Christ. And sometimes through that process of realizing how they're deteriorating and that the end is coming, okay, they can find the truth of the.
Does that happen? Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay, others. Carolyn.
I'm ready, but I see myself lingering and being more of a burden to my children because they have to help me with things, shopping, and like I have guests coming and my other daughter had to come over and make the bed. I can't do that. And it's just little things, but I see myself, I'm still going and I want to go, but it's just getting harder.
Yeah.
And I'm ready.
Okay, who wants a long, slow, lingering death? Okay, so we had a lot of people evidently giving this a lot of thought. I'm going to start with Carolyn, if I could. As a person gets older, the family gradually comes to the conclusion that their parent is not going to live forever. My mother started saying, by all means, kiss your grandma goodbye, because this may be the last time that you ever see her when my grandma was in her late 60s. Back in the day, you know. Think about it. People got Social Security at 65 because the government figured not a whole lot of people were going to live that long. Check it out. So, you know, when my grandmother was in her late 60s, I was told, kiss your grandmother goodbye. This could be the last time you see her. She lived to 89. I got to see her a long time. You had to kiss her off. And by the time that she was called home, we were all prepared for it. And we could see the declining health, and we were starting to get ready for it, even though she was in pretty good health. My grandfather was a little bit different. He was pretty much blind by his mid-70s. And he was a couple of years older than my grandma. And she, who had never driven before in her life, now had to do the driving. One day, she ran a red light, got hit, and that's how my grandfather died.
Oh my gosh.
All of a sudden. Okay, so now you've got another dynamic. A very sudden death for a person that you anticipated was going to live much longer. My mother evidently inherited my grandmother's genes. When I retired, we decided we would go back up from Florida to northern Indiana to be with our parents, our mothers, in the remaining years of life. Had anybody in your family ever lived as long as Grandma Jane? No. And yet, by the time she passed away, I mean, she was 80, she was 89 also. It seems to be a big year in our family. She was ready, the family was ready. We were prepared for that loss. My mother lived to 97. Every night when she went to bed and then woke up in the morning, she was a little surprised that she was still there. She was one of these women that you thought was maybe going to live forever because she had such strength. And then when the time did come, it was so fast that nobody was really prepared for it. My brother-in-law had gone over to her apartment in assisted living and found her dead. There was no sign that it was coming. Think now about, and it seems unfair to us, think now about people who are losing their memories. That itself is a cause for grief, because it's a loss. Think about people, Alzheimer's, dementia, something like that. Or think about people that have lost bodily control over their lives. Maybe they're bedridden. Maybe they're on bedpans with bed sores. Maybe they've got tremors, familial tremors, Parkinson's or something like that. The family starts to say to themselves, what? Come, Lord Jesus. Okay? Be our guest. Let your gifts, heaven, be among us. And we start to feel such compassion for this person because of what they're going through. Oftentimes, and I phrased that question very deliberately before about whether or not you want a slow, lingering death or whether or not you wanted one that's longer for a reason. Who does it benefit if you die? You. Who does it benefit if you maybe hang around for a while and go through some rites of passage? The family. The remainder. Which of those two is self-centered? Ouch. That hurt, didn't it? I used to think I wanted to die, just go to sleep one night and not wake up the next morning, wake up in heaven instead. And then I realized that my life has a bigger impact than on just me. And if I were to just suddenly die out of the clear blue with no warning signs, who would take the brunt of that? My family. And so frankly, I don't want to be in a whole lot of pain, but lingering around for several months wouldn't be an altogether bad thing, so that people could get used to the idea. For those of you online, this is my wife, Laura. Do you want to speak into the microphone? Because, if it comes all of a sudden, it becomes a tidal wave. Remember the young man with the wife and the two little girls that I told you about? The two little girls were just finishing up grade school and going into high school. Both of them became drug addicts. The wife became an alcoholic. It completely overwhelmed them. And we don't know how our family's going to react to our loss, to the loss of us. And so it's many times best to have these conversations while you are yet living and well, and talk about these things around the table. Did anybody find that these conversations were really uncomfortable? Really? That surprises me. Most people don't like to talk about how they think about themselves dying. Just take you, right?
Doris didn't need a mic.
My name on two different grave markers in two different cities.
Yeah. Sadly, there are people who, when they die, are not missed at all. And this actually does happen. It happened some time ago when Laura and I were living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was early in the time when you could go ahead and auto pay everything. Remember those days? You could pay for everything. You just had it all set up to take automatically. The Social Security check could be deposited automatically. And the newspaper said that this guy had probably been dead 3 or 4 years before anybody really noticed. And that he had been, and this is a play on words that kind of stuck, he had been virtually alive. He'd paid his bills, he'd gotten his checks, he'd gone ahead and paid the rent. He had nobody to mourn him, nobody to notice his loss. What a tragedy that is. Now, I want you now to think about people who occupy a very small part of your life. And here, I don't think we need a microphone. Who occupies a very small piece of your emotional life? The what?
The postman.
The postman. You recognize the postman by name, maybe? And they wave at you and they recognize you. And all of a sudden, if it's a different postman, how long does your grieving process last? It's really short. Doggone it all, he died. He was a good postman. And that's about the grieving process. Okay? Anybody else? The neighbors down the road. You see them, you wave at them, maybe you have a neighborhood Christmas party or concrete cocktails, is what they call it in our neighborhood. And you, all of a sudden, one or the other is gone, or both. Our neighbor, yeah. Does anybody here know Chip at Kroger's? Chip is our favorite checkout guy at our Kroger's. I mean, he smiles, he knows us, he knows what he's doing as a checkout person. He lets me bag my own groceries because he knows I'm finicky. But Chip is an old guy. I mean, I think Chip is probably older than I am. And when Chip is no longer there, how long is my mourning process going to be for him? When I no longer see him, I might not even notice for weeks and weeks and weeks. Very short mourning process. And everybody in that emotional pizza pie of yours has a varying sized slice. Some of them you won't even really pay attention to. Your grieving process is going to be very slight, but others are going to be huge. Who occupies the largest size slice in your life? Probably your spouse. If you've already lost your spouse, probably your children. Maybe your grandchildren. Especially if you've raised your own grandchildren. Now, what does that do? Does your grieving process just grow close like that? No. What happens? What happens when we lose somebody that's really, really close to us? Beware of the firsts. Beware of the firsts. The first time you have a birthday and they're not there to celebrate their birthday. The first Christmas, the first Easter, the first time that you smell their perfume, the first time you drive past where they used to work, the first time that you don't go on that vacation to that special place that you always used to go together. Beware of the first, because what happens? Bam! All of a sudden, it's like it just happened yesterday. I had a person in my office some years back. It was kind of an interesting thing. She had been in an elevator in San Francisco, and she just started crying for no reason. She just broke down in tears. She thought that she was going crazy. Does that ever happen to people? Yeah. The grief can be so overwhelming that you think that you're going crazy. She came into my office the next week, and she was still in tears, trying to figure out why she's going crazy. And I said, well, let's think about this. I said, first of all, and I knew her well enough, she had lost her husband 2 years before. She had lost one brother and one sister in that year. She had lost one parent. And she stepped onto that elevator, and this all grieving that had happened within 2 years. She stepped on that elevator, and what did she smell? Gardenias. There was a florist taking a bouquet of gardenias up to a floor, and that was her wedding flower that she had when she was married. And she thought that she was going crazy, and no, all it did was bring up a lot of memories that she had not resolved. Okay. Now, when you take out not just one big slice, but several big pieces of that emotional pie, you are a very, very vulnerable person. Almost anything can trigger very strong emotions. Almost anything. It can be, I'll tell you, around our house, if Laura predeceases me, when spring training comes around and I see the Yankees playing, oh man, you know, Laura would have been all over this. You know, there are those things that remind me of Laura. I probably will have tears in my eyes when I smell gardenias, because that was Laura's flower, you know, that she had in her bouquet. And there will be things, you know, if I smell her perfume someplace and I'm looking around like this, that will probably get me. Or if, you know, women, what are the endearing things that your husband does that if you were suddenly, around our house, maybe it's the smell of fresh bread. You like the smell of fresh bread? I love the smell of fresh bread. I learned how to bake bread. I now bake a lot of bread. If Laura goes out and smells fresh bread, that might be enough to go ahead and trigger tears. And we're all like that because we have these things in our mind when we think of various people. We see somebody that from the back looks exactly like our spouse. We go running up to them, kind of half hoping and half in disbelief, and what happens? They're not. Oh. We see a car like maybe he or she used to drive. We hear a voice that sounds very familiar. We hear a song. The first time we hear our song can be a very, very difficult time. Okay? So spend a few minutes and talk about the firsts that maybe you've had if you've lost somebody and you've experienced that thing where a year later, all of a sudden, all of these emotions well right back up to the surface. Moment. By general consensus, I think I can safely say that the firsts are hard for us. I'll tell you a first for us. We had this wonderful little dog. And the other day, and I haven't shown you yet, do any of you have OneDrive? You know, and you get these memories from back when. And all of a sudden I get this email and it said, remember when? And I clicked on it, and here's this little puppy sitting right next to me, sound asleep. One of the few times you never saw him moving was when he was sleeping. He was always busy. Well, he died very unexpectedly. It was Flynn, yeah, our dog Flynn, died very unexpectedly. He wound up with some disease where at the age of 4.5, at the very strength of life, all of a sudden it would have taken $1,000 a month to keep him alive. Wow. And then here's this photo. Oh, like I needed that. So when we grieve, it is something that is significant, and that's an important thing that I want you to take away with you this morning. Grieving is a significant thing. Don't try and muscle it underneath the table. Don't try and deal with it with a stiff upper lip, or it will never go away. It's best to face it head on, to talk about it as a reality. Here is something that I'm going to ask you to think about, and I'm not going to open it up for discussion because otherwise we'll run out of time. When you lost someone, did you find that you needed to talk about it all the time? Many people do. And you know why? Because it seems so unreal to people that it could happen, that as soon as it's brought up, you want to go through the whole story again. And it's not just that you're sharing information with somebody, but what you're doing is you're actually kind of going through it for yourself and saying, this is real. This actually did happen. This is not just a bad dream that I'm going to wake up from. And so many times when you hear somebody that has, when you encounter somebody that has lost a loved one, the best thing that you can do is say, what happened? And then shut up and let them talk, because that talking is very therapeutic for them. They need to be able to see it as a reality. This is not going to be something where tomorrow is a repeat of today. This is not going to be Groundhog Day where it goes over and over and over again. But they do need to go ahead and face that loss. Otherwise, it will always, always be there. And when it does appear, it's going to come up at a very inopportune time. Some people that bury their emotions, and I know that a lot of guys have this problem. When guys bury their emotions and they come back up to the surface, many times that's called going postal, where all of a sudden they take it out on the rest of the world, whether they deserve it or not. Now, I want you to think for a moment. I want to discuss this, what I call grieving in proportion. We all know what grief is like, even though my way of grieving is maybe and probably different than yours. I grieve different than you, but we have all grieved. Some people grieve for a very long period of time. Some people say that they grieve for a very short period of time. Some people we hardly grieve at all, like the postal carrier, like the checkout guy at Kroger's, hardly grieve them at all. But when we lose somebody that's important to us, how do we grieve? Do we grieve in proportion? And I bring that up because, you know, we all have people in our lives that are members of our families, or maybe they're friends of ours from some other place. And when we grieve them, it just seems like we're crying more than what we really should. You ever notice that sometimes some people just fall apart because their florist died? Were they that close to their florist? Why is that? Something called transference. Transference is when, and we can sometimes grieve somebody who we don't know all that well because we're imagining ourselves in their loved one's situation. How, for the family that lost the husband and the two little girls had such an issue, and the mom had an issue afterwards, the place was filled with people who were not friends of theirs, and all of them had really, I mean, they were all going for fresh hankies. How come they grieved so hard when they hardly even knew him? Because they had transferred themselves into that picture and were grieving for that family, not themselves. We sometimes need to be reminded when we are grieving who we are grieving for and who we are not grieving for. Otherwise, what happens is when we grieve out of proportion, then the things that really do deserve our grief, we can't fully address. If I weep over every bird that hits the window and crumps, what's going to happen when Laura passes away? You know, what's going to happen when somebody significant in my life is no longer there? Where do I go from mourning everything as though it's a 10? Where do you go after you've reached the 10? And so I would encourage you to really, as you lose people, jobs, when you retire, you have lost a career. Many people lose their identities. They say, who are you? What do you do? And they equate what they do with who they are. And so when all of a sudden a person retires, all of a sudden they're no longer the person that they used to be, and they mourn that. You can also mourn things. We've talked about pets, we've talked about friends. You can mourn the loss of your physical abilities. I find it very hard to kneel anymore after my knee surgery. But I can pray standing up. I don't have to kneel. And so I have to put these things in perspective and say, what about this? How does that fit into the overall picture? Can I do what I used to be able to do? No, not by a long shot. Now, what I want to do real quickly is I want to talk specifically while we have a little bit of time. We're going to be talking about grieving again next week. I want to talk about grieving for the very young and grieving for the very old because it is different than everybody else. When someone who is elderly dies, by that time in their life, we'll take my mother as a for instance here. She had outlived all of her friends, every last one of them. Oh, she had made some new friends, but they weren't ever really close friends. And she was in a strange place. She had already given up her house. If she were to have lost a child, and think about her emotional pie. Her emotional pie is now divided among 5 or 6 people, okay? Her 3 children and their spouses, and her grandchildren. That was it. If one of us had passed away, her grieving would have been dramatically more at her age than it would have been when she was much younger, because they occupy such a proportionately smaller life. Think about children. Who are the biggest? You think about a 5 or 6-year-old. Who occupies all the slices of the pie of their emotions? Mom and dad and brother and sister, and Fido, the fish. Oh. So their whole world is there, especially if they're not even school age yet and don't have any little cronies, in kindergarten or first grade to hang out with. Do they really understand what they're going through? No. And that makes it all the much more difficult for them because they don't have the words to go ahead and express their feelings to people. So as you go through this week, here's your assignment. This is not a hard assignment, I don't think. What I would like you to do is I would like you to think about maybe places or people for whom you are still grieving, even though it may have been a very long time, because that's one of the things we're going to address next week. I want you to think about things that we can do to make grieving easier for us, okay? Because, again, it's not a topic that a lot of people like to talk about, which is one of the reasons I'm bringing it up today, because, if we don't bring these things up, we enter into these things blind, and then we stumble around through them, and that's no good either. So, with that in mind, that's your assignment for next week. Let's close with family prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Have a blessed week, everyone.